Good evening. I welcome you all to this meeting of Cardinia Shire Council. Please note that this meeting is being webcast live over the internet on Council's website. Councillors will be available after this meeting if any members of the gallery wish to discuss issues of interest. We will commence this meeting with the following prayer. Almighty God, we humbly request that you bestow your blessings upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and to the betterment of the peoples of Cardinia Shire. Amen. The Cardinia Shire Council respectfully acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Bunurong and the Wurundjeri people and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We have received an apology from Councillor Owen this evening, who is unwell and unable to attend. Before moving to the business of tonight's meeting, I take this opportunity to acknowledge the recent passing of Doug Hamilton from Lang Lang. Doug was a councillor for the Shire between 2003 and 2008 and was awarded Citizen of the Year in 2010. Doug will be sorely missed, and our condolences are extended to his family and friends. On a brighter note, it is with pleasure that I acknowledge our local residents whose service to our communities were recognised in Australia Day honours. Tony Arrigo received an Order of Australia Medal for his service to the Bunyip community. Elizabeth Wilson also received an OAM for her service to the Lang Lang community. And Gary Howell was recognised for his extensive service to the wider Cardinia community. The council is blessed by having residents of the calibre of Tony, Elizabeth and Gary, and congratulations to all of them on receiving these well-deserved awards. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting as listed? Carol Ryan to move, and I've got Councillor Graham Moore to second. Thank you. All those in favour, councillors? I declare that carried. Councillors, do I have any declarations of interest? There being none, I'll continue on to ordinary business. The council conducts its meetings in accordance to a consent agenda. Councillors have advised of the matters for consideration this evening that they wish to discuss or debate. The remaining items will be adopted without discussion. The items withdrawn for tonight's meeting are as follows. Item 1, Amendment C228 Pakenham Activity Centre, Request for Planning Panel, withdrawn by Councillor Schilling. Councillor Schilling to move.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the following recommendation that Council receive and consider all submissions received during the exhibition of Planning Scheme Amendment C228 and in accordance with Section 23 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, refer all submissions for consideration to an independent planning panel to be approved by the Minister for Planning.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any seconders for this motion? Councillor Colin Ross. I'll go back to Councillor Schilling to speak to the item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ross, too, for seconding this very important item tonight. I've withdrawn this item to give the community an update on the long-awaited Pakenham Structure Plan. As we do know, the Pakenham Structure Plan is fundamental to the future development of that activity centre within Central Pakenham, but it's also important in Central Pakenham for the preservation of Pakenham's history. And that's why there have been a number of pieces of work that have occurred alongside the development of this plan. And one of those is the heritage overlay, which was completed by this council. As we all know, the Pakenham Structure Plan provides us with a 20-year vision for the Pakenham Activity Centre and will guide development and turn our activity centre into a bustling hub of activity. High densification within transport service hubs is the direction of the state planning scheme. So it's important that we get ahead of the game so we can provide current residents, as well as residents of the future, not only a place to live, but a livable community. And overall, that plan achieves that. I think that it's a great document that we put out on exhibition, and I think, and that was reflected in some of the submissions. I do feel in parts that it does lack a bit of future vision for our community, particularly around Main Street. We do have the we do have the opportunity now to create an open space that will foster a culture of restaurants, places of entertainment, and an activated nightlife. And Main Street would be the perfect location for this to happen. Yet even with the provision of adequate distributor roads planned and a public transport hub and cycling paths, we still insist in 20 years' time on having a vision where cars will travel through the Main Street. Yes, in 2020, I agree that this is needed. However, I would still argue in 2040, it may be a different story, but that's just my take on that aspect of the plan. But the reason why we're here today is because that plan has gone out to public exhibition, and Council in that time has received 18 submissions. Overall, we had a lot of positive submissions, people who are in favour of this plan. There were some who submitted with a neutral, and there were others that had some objections to it. And due to when anything goes out to public exhibition, if there ever are submissions that are unable to be resolved, an independent planning panel needs to be appointed by the Minister for Planning to hear these submissions. So tonight I'm asking councillors to support the recommendation in sending these submissions to a planning panel, which will be appointed by the Minister for Planning if it goes ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. I'll go to the seconder, Councillor Ross, to speak.
I reserve my right to speak, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Do I have any other councillors who would like to speak to this item? Councillor Carol Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just want to add that this would be an ideal place to have these activities because we've got it's not only for youth, it's all age groups, and when we have all age groups together, we all have knowledge that we share, and I think this is an ideal place because it'll be a happy place, and I think, yes, I'd be in favour of the amendment and the changes, and hopefully that we get it before we all are too old. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Any other councillors wish to speak to this? There being none, I'll go back to Councillor Schilling to summarise.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and also thank you to my Central Ward colleagues as well for seconding and contributing to this very important conversation. I'd like to stress that this amendment, this structure plan isn't happening in isolation. There are a number of other pieces of work that are happening at the same time to make sure at its full conclusion that there's adequate overlays and items in place to make this work. And a few of those pieces include the car parking overlay, which Council have recently done, and that's around collecting financial contributions to make sure that the future of parking is adequate within the activity centre. Also, residents interested would have seen that the PB Ronald Master Plan has been put out to community consultation. That's a really important piece of work that I really stress people need to advocate for, this council and future councils, because as we see increased densification in our activity centre, that could well be one of the only remaining open pieces of green space that we have left. So we need to make sure that we're planning for that. And we also have the exciting future of Skyrail through Pakenham as well, which will unleash a whole heap of opportunities as a council where we can plan for future infrastructure and services for our residents. So I'd like to once again thank everyone who spoke tonight, and I'm just asking for this report, the submissions to be sent to an independent planning panel for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Just before we go to a vote, I realise it was remiss of me. I didn't give Councillor Ross a chance to speak to this item a second time. Councillor Ross, would you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just reinforcing what Councillor Schilling said about the BP Ronald Reserve Precinct. That is an exceptionally important piece of land there, and what happens in that area will determine so many things that will be done in the heart of Pakenham. So it does need to be looked at seriously because, as Councillor Schilling also said, we won't have, now the racecourse is gone, a whole lot of space to do all those sorts of things. And I think Councillor Ryan said it well as well, that that space is for all people, all ages, and all groups should be considered in it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillors, I'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour? I declare that unanimously carried. Thank you. Next item is item 7, the proposed compulsory acquisition of 4 Station Street officer, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following: that 1, Council acquire part of the land at 4 Station Street Officer in accordance with the Officer Precinct Structure Plan and Officer Development Contribution Plan by compulsory acquisition pursuant to the Land Acquisition and Compensation Act 1986, and 2, the CEO be authorised to agree to the compensation payable and sign all documentation associated with the acquisition of the property. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder for this item? Councillor Letitia Wilmot. I'll go back to Councillor Owen to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. On page 79, it sort of details the small slither of land required, and this is essential for Council to upgrade this intersection. We all know that there is a program that's about to roll out in relation to improving these major intersections along the Princess Highway corridor between Beaconsfield and Pakenham, and this is one of them. We urgently require this land to undertake, firstly, the design work and also obviously go out to tender. We as a council have tried to communicate with the landowner. It is a company with no success. So it is important that we do go through this process to acquire this land. There is a process, statutory process, and this will commence that. So hopefully during this process we can actually have a response from the owner, but failing that, we've got a process. There will be compensation, and that's in the report. We believe a total of roughly $34,000 will be required, and I believe that's fully funded by the development contributions plan for Officer, so that is funded by the developers. So I move this. It's very important that we proceed down this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll go to Councillor Wilmot to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owen. Yet again, you've covered this very, very thoroughly, and it's not left me much to say except to agree with you. It's unfortunate that we get to this position where we've got to do a compulsory acquisition after so many attempts to actually talk with the landowner, but we are at this position, and I agree with you. It is necessary that we go through this process as soon as possible so that we can get on with the full design and development and the tender process. So I thoroughly support you in this process.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other councillors that would like to speak to this item? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in 12 years this is only the second piece of land I can ever remember that we've had to actually compulsory acquire on council. I think it's really sad that we haven't been able to get in touch with the landowner to talk with him and negotiate it through. But anyway, it's for the community safety, to do with roads and trying to redesign intersections to make them safer. So I hope my fellow councillors will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Do I have any other councillors who would like to speak to this item? There being none, I'll go back to Councillor Owen to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the other councillors. Just clarification, the report does, on page 76, says the state government has committed funds to council. I believe that should read the federal government. Can I just get clarification if that's right? I believe it was the federal government commitment. So just for the minutes, we acknowledge that it's the federal government contributing to the major intersection upgrades along with council and through the developer contributions plan. So I just want to clarify that. So I move so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillors, I'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour? I declare it carried. Thank you. We'll move along now to item number 9, basketball in Cardinia Shire, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a proposed alternate motion, and it is the following: that the report be noted that Cardinia Shire Council acknowledges that basketball is a popular and growing sport which urgently requires additional basketball courts. That in the 2020-2021 Cardinia Shire budget, Council allocates funds to commence the planning of additional basketball courts at Cardinia Life, Gin Bin Recreation Reserve and the Bunyip Auditorium. I move so.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Schilling. I'll go back to Councillor Brett Owen to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Back in November, Council did resolve the motion that's on page 86. And the reason why I propose this motion is because of the feedback that I'm getting from our community about what is Council's intention for additional courts across Cardinia. The report notes how popular basketball is in our Shire, and it continues to grow. And the report's great. It talks about the stats and the pressure points that we are facing in Cardinia Shire. So currently there are 444 teams registered with over 3,900 players registered in total. Peak court occupancy is at 88.3% and off-peak occupancy 33.1%. There are a total of 631 registered stadium teams across basketball and netball for 1920. So the stadium is obviously at Cardinia Life, caters for other sports including netball and basketball. This is the highest number of registered teams at Cardinia Life, and we are on an onward slope of increased participation. And without action, I believe that there are serious risks of young people particularly being turned around and not being able to partake in this sport because of the courts at capacity. So the report is really good. We'll talk about Cardinia Life and the pressure points. So it's used by netball and basketball, and you look at the timetable or the diagram on page 87, and it talks about activity. So Mondays the courts are used till 11 p.m. Anyone who's working, getting up at 5 a.m, maybe 4:30, they're playing games at 10 o'clock, and they're getting out at 11 p.m. Netball, 10 o'clock on Tuesdays. Wednesdays, again, activity until 11 p.m. Courts are booked. There's no alternative to play other than till 11 p.m. Same with Thursday, 11 p.m. Men's competition. Friday, 11 p.m. The weekend is very challenging for our families. They can start at the stadium at 8:30, and if they're a family with multiple participants within the family, they could be there at 8:20 on a Saturday night when we know there's other family commitments. There's games currently being played up until 8:20 on a Saturday. And also Sunday up till 1 p.m. For basketball, I think, and netball 6:30 on a Sunday, not before school. So that really highlights the issues at Cardinia Life. Also, moving on to officer, that's close to capacity. I know we've got the floorball running out of there, but we are now proposing that as of the winter basketball season, the under 8s, because the Cardinia Life is at capacity, the under 8s is proposing, I think it's accepted, that for the winter season they will play at the officer hub. It's great to see that this facility being used, but that will create problems with families if they have to be in two places at one time. At officer and Cardinia Life, you've got to rely on your friends to take one of your children to officer and while you stay at Cardinia Life. So that will propose challenges, but we don't have any other option. That will happen in winter. And I know Councillor Moore will talk about Bunyip, but that also shows capacity as well, nearing at capacity. The report's great, but it didn't go far enough. And that's why I put in this alternative motion, that as of the next council budget, that we allocate serious funds for future provision of additional courts at Cardinia Life, the new recreation reserve in Officer on the border of Beaconsfield, Gin Bin, and also Bunyip, to start planning. These facilities will cost a lot of money, and by planning them, commencing the planning at 2020 and 2021 financial year, we can start those plans, and then we can start having conversations with other governments to hopefully get significant funding. So without those plans, we can't at least apply for those grants. So I think it's essential that Council acknowledges that basketball is a growing sport, and we need to act and start acting by planning for these additional courts at those three facilities. it is a great problem to have, being there on a Saturday and seeing so many young people partake in sport. And it is a family sport. You see families down there, and they are down there for the whole day. And it is so packed, that place. But it's great to see so many, particularly young people, being active. So it is a problem that we have, but I think by us, if Council does accept the motion tonight, these amendments, it says to the basketball community that we are noting that there's some challenges in this space. You need additional courts. And Council was acting and responding and going to plan for that provision. So I welcome other councillors' comments on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll now go to Councillor Schilling to speak to the item.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be supporting Councillor Owen's alternate motion tonight and this report. Based on the fact that Central Ward councils will know Central Ward, Pakenham community, growth corridor, we've had huge issues, and it's well and truly overdue that we need more basketball courts within our region. Cardinia Life, when those courts were built, that may have been adequate to service the population, but now it's inadequate, and the advocacy has to start now. We can't be waiting until an election to throw together a drawing on a scrap piece of paper and say, here, fund this. We need to be putting the money forward now to have plans so these projects can be shovel ready and ready to go, so we can advocate for more funding in this space to bring the project forward if that's possible. We have seen developer contributions funding a whole gamut of recreation reserves, particularly around football ovals. Unfortunately now within Cardinia Life, that's not something that we can rely on, and we do have to keep our fingers on the pulse and realise where there are deficits for our sporting communities, and in this case it is basketball. And even if we look at the current structure of Cardinia Life and we look at our basketball courts, our participants and spectators will freeze in winter and they'll boil in summer. They're not courts that are adequate for our community to be playing on. And by saying, look, you can go to a private, why don't you approach your local schools? There's a few that are up to standard. That's not good enough. As a council, we are obliged to give our community good quality facilities that they can enjoy. And I'll be supporting this alternate motion tonight because I believe that planning needs to start now to deliver proper facilities for our basketball community and our growing community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any councillors to speak? Councillor Ryan first, and then Councillor Moore.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'll be supporting Councillor Owen's motion in support for this because, well, I played basketball when I was a kid, so, it's been around a long time, and played basketball in Pakenham when it was in the PB Ronald Stadium, so which was a smaller area to run around. So we have come to a reasonable extent of size. I'm surprised that we didn't look at this into our future further down, the numbers that were going to happen in this growth area. It's all about health and well-being, but it's not about just youth, and it's great to see youth, but some of the other events that happen, table tennis, senior competition, U3A table tennis as well, exercise classes, besides netball and basketball, floorball. So there's a lot of activities that are happening within this stadium and hopefully further other stadiums in the future. This is a good enough reason to say that Cardinia Life needs expansion on the size of the courts because there's not enough there, and the numbers are growing within this area, and I'd like to see a lot more thought put into our future and what's going to happen in our future numbers. So I will be totally in support of it, and hopefully everyone else will be in support of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ram. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Owen, for your motion, and I fully support it all the way. Thank you for highlighting how important this is to our community. It's commitment that commitment, that word commitment, is a very strong word, and that's what we should be to this particular sport. Particularly the Bunyip Stadium, and thank you for allowing me to talk about the Bunyip Stadium. It's one of my aspirations from council ever since I started on council some 9 years ago. It's the home of the Bunyip Bulls. 30 junior teams and 7 senior teams have one court in that area. It's pleasing to note in the budget for the 2021 we have $200,000. 21-22 we have a budget in there of $250,000 for the planning and the concept planning of this stadium. It's a big amount. It's $3 million build, this particular court, one court. It's going to help so many. We have to have the funding though from all levels of government to be able to enable us to do this project. And I commend the Section 86 committee, the hard-working and extremely hard-working committee for the Bunyip Stadium, who are prepared, and I must remind you that they're prepared to put $200,000 of their own money into this stadium. Just shows you what that generates and what they've held waiting to do this stadium all these years gone by. So very, very commendable what they did. But the council officers are currently working with the Crown Land Reserve Committee of Management at the Bunyip Rec Reserve. It's a big team effort there to find a suitable and agree to a location for this additional court as a part of the existing auditorium stadium. Restrictions on the site mean that the court is highly unlikely to fit elsewhere on the site. So it's a difficult place to site a big area that a stadium takes up. Officers are hoping for a resolution and progress within the next few months of that, which will start the ball rolling. Excuse the pun of the ball rolling. Council officers submitted a priority projects advocacy sheet as a part of the 2018 state government election and 2019 federal election for the extension of the Bunyip Auditorium to provide an additional court. Council has also included funding in the draft capital works budget, which I mentioned before, to progress the design and implication of the proposed court extension in the Bunyip Auditorium. However, the timing of the planned future court will rely on required funding being available and approval of the Committee of Management and DELWUP as the landowner. But it's a fantastic project, this will be, down the track. And I want to thank you, councillors, for bringing this up and speak on this particular item, because it is something very special to us, particularly up in the Bunyip region. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome, Councillor Moore. Do I have Councillor Ross wishes to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an amazing success story here in Cardinia Shire Council. I must earn the area of Cardinia Shire. I can remember when I first worked in Pakenham, I went down to BP Ronald Stadium and practiced basketball when there was only one court, and there was a squash court there as well at Outlook, which then got converted over to be used by Outlook, and they built the 4 courts down at the Cardinia Life. There was no pool at the time when they first created it. There was just 4 basketball courts. You didn't enter from the end that you entered now. You entered down where the car park is down near the football club, and you went in a door down there. I must say, going from 1 court to 4 courts to 8 courts has been an amazing success down at the basketball stadium. Not only is it used by basketballers, it's used by other people. It's used by netballers, floorballers, volleyballers, badminton people, and other group volleyballers in different things. We've even had the Special Olympics, different events down there as well. So it is a huge success. And I think there was a chap early on named Jack Vanstone, who was one of the foundational people in the group of the basketball, and he's now I think about 70 years old, and he's for the last 22 years run a school holiday program down there at the basketball centre, and the amount of young people that he's seen go through there over the years, I think he'd be extremely proud to see that there's 3,900 registered players. They've now got VBA basketball teams there for seniors. There's a progression line. My son, when we first moved to Pakenham back in 1998, played in the under-14s, under-16s, under-18s, under-20s and the men's team. And now at 34, he still plays basketball. It's a lifelong skill that they learn. I think Les Twentyman put it best when he said He believes there's a correlation between young people who play in sports teams as how they behave in the community. And he pointed out that the other year there was 803 juveniles that went through the Footscray Juvenile Magistrates Court, and out of 803, only 3 had played team sport. He believes there's a correlation, but feeling part of something and being in with a team. And I just think it's wonderful that council, we have the issue now that we need to grow, and we need to get growing in this area. And I think it's a real value for money. It's something that males and females play. It's something that older people play. And as we're going to find out in the next few years, when our residents over the age of 60 will go from something like, I think it's 13% to 25% in our shire. You're going to find out people play masters games too. They play older. You want people to keep moving and be involved in things. So the more things we can offer, the better. So I just think I thank Councillor Owen for bringing this up. And I just can't wait to see what happens in this space. I know Jack Vanstone would be extremely proud of the fact that it's grown, maybe not at the speed that he chose for it to grow. And I'll leave you on this note. He's a guy who really wows young kids. He's a really, really lovely guy. And he's famous for being able to throw free throws with his eyes closed and get the ball in nearly 100% of the time. I don't know how he does it, but he can do it. And kids are just wowed by him. So anyway, I look forward to seeing what happens in this space. I'm absolutely certain that state and federal government will look to put something in, because this is a facility that is heavily used and it will be used in future. I hope my fellow councillors support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Do I have any other councillors wish to speak to this item? There being none, I'll go back to Councillor Owen to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all the councillors for speaking. It looks very positive that this could go through, but just in preparation for tonight, I forwarded the council officers' report to the basketball community that I'm aware of and connected with, and the feedback that I got was that the report was great, but it didn't give them any sort of hope of what council was intending to do. So this alternate motion that I propose, gives that hope and clear indication to them that this council is committed to commence the planning for additional courts, and I think that is a great step forward. Obviously through the budget process, this will get a Guernsey in relation to having the allocated funds to plan for those 3 facilities, and I think that's a really good thing. Just going back to stats, and I think amazing stats, there are a total of 631 registered stadium teams across basketball and netball at Cardinia Life. That is a lot of particularly young people. It's a very popular sport, and I think we need to invest in that. We do very well in investing in other recreation sports, football, cricket, soccer, and I think we need to do more in this space, and I think that's really great if we can start the planning. So I thank councillors for your support, and I look forward to, hopefully, that we get on with the planning of these new additional courts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillors, I'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the item carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 10, dog off-leash order withdrawn by Councillor Colin Ross.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation that Council resolve as follows. 1, in accordance with the power conferred by Section 22-2A of the Domestic Animals Act 1994, that Cardinia Shire Council orders that the presence of dogs is prohibited in any public place of the municipal district other than the public place that is on private land, unless A, the dog is under control by leash, chain or cord connecting the dog to the person, or that the dog is in a public place that is identified by prominent signs as designated off-leash park. 2, designated off-leash areas include the areas identified by prominent signs at the following locations: Tumut Creek Linear Reserve, Pakenham; Elmer Trelaw Reserve, Cockatoo; Don Jackson Reserve, Pakenham; Cochrane Park, Cooirup; Pepe's Land, Emerald; Cockatoo Road Reserve, Pakenham; Garfield Recreation Reserve, Garfield; Tentallon Boulevard, Detention Basin Reserve, Beaconsfield, Bob Burgess Reserve, Beaconsfield, Vantage Drive Reserve, Pakenham, Simon Drive Reserve, Pakenham, Ray Kenobi Reserve, Pakenham, and Onyx Reserve Officer. 3, in Order 1, public place. That has the same meaning as in Section 3 of the Summary Offences Act.
Do I have a seconder for this item? Councillor Schilling. I'll go back to Councillor Colin Ross to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm extremely excited about this, how this has grown, this success. I think it goes back to a resident that most people would know who back in that time, a guy by the name of Ed Kirby. And Ed Kirby is not with us anymore, but Ed Kirby was a chap who, when I first got on council in 2008, invited me down to participate in what he was doing down there with his off-leash dogs behind Toomuck Valley Reserve. And he had about 20 dogs going at 9 o'clock in the morning, and he guaranteed any resident that he can walk a dog in a pack of dogs and they won't fight. So anyway, I thought, well, our little Pomeranian had a fierce attitude towards other dogs, could not socialise with anybody, so therefore I took our dog down. And our dog managed to go along and not fight any other dogs, which was quite amazing. But what Ed did was he actually said it had a couple of good things about it. It got residents out to go for a walk in the morning and take their dogs and go out with a group of people and socialise. And it also made the fact that dogs could socialise well. So he put forward that he believed that we should have something official put in. And it was highlighted in the 15th of the 7th, 2009 in the local Gazette. Pooch Park's a barking success, it said, and the motion was moved that we went for a 12-month trial, that the dogs would be able to walk in behind the reserve there from certain hours between 7 in the morning and 7 at night. And fortunately at the time council approved that, and it goes on from there. We had 12 months of success, and then that folded into moving the area a little bit bigger. And then in the end, as more residents came and loved their animals and wanted to go out in the community, we found a way to expand it. So I just think it's really exciting to see something that can start off with, and there was a few critics early on who said that this wouldn't work, that it wouldn't be good for the community, and they didn't think it could be a success. It has turned out to be. All of their fears were dismayed and put away. So anyway, I look forward to finding out how the other reserves go. I know fellow councillors go out there and go out and walk dogs, or go and walk amongst the people with dogs, and they say it is very, very popular. So anyway, I hope the council can make sure that we do our end of the bargain here well, which is policing it to make sure that the people who do the right thing, feel confident that the people who don't do the right thing will get spoken to, and they'll learn to behave like the rest of the people. Anyway, I just endorse this report, and I just look forward to seeing the whole package expand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I'll go to Councillor Schilling to speak to the item.
Thank you, Mayor. And of course, this is quite an important part of the off-leash strategy, because before we can do that, it's important to make sure that we're able to define areas where dogs have to be on leash as well. So that's what this is about. But this is an exciting piece of work in a much, once again, with a lot of things with council, a much bigger piece of work. And councillors will all be very aware that this has been going on for. This article that Councillor Ross has been referring to was from 2009. So this has been something that's been going on for 10 years. So it's well and truly overdue. In the November 2019 council meeting, the off-leash report was tabled, which endorsed a report saying that all infrastructure across 14 sites should be completed by September 2020, with the bigger regional parks being installed sooner. So for Central Ward, that's fantastic news, because that means Don Jackson Reserve off Ahern Road and Toomuck Reserve will be fully fitted out dog parks within this year, which is great news for the community. And the time frame that council has given councils around that should be around that April mark. So I'm very supportive of this timeline, and I'm looking forward to seeing these dog parks rolling out, particularly at the regional level, and then throughout all of our other centres. Off-leash zones within the community. It's a important piece of infrastructure, which, if you're looking at some of our bigger style projects, they're in the millions, and this definitely isn't within that budget frame. So it's a relatively small investment for a huge amount of community gain. Dog parks are very popular in the community, and I look forward to seeing them rolling out across the Shire over the next 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I'll be in support of this, of Councillor Ross. I think it's fantastic. I mean, we talk about health and well-being of people. It's health and well-being of animals, especially dogs. Mind you, though, there's 2 parks that are going to be near me that I'll keep an eye out. But putting my dog there, she'd be so excited. She'd bark all the time, just annoy all the other dogs. So she's probably one example that's not a good dog to take anywhere when there's lots of other dogs around. But I think it's really something that's been a long time coming. And I think the community has voiced their opinion on this on several occasions over the time that I've been in council. And I think, we've just got to keep in mind it's health and well-being for our animals. And sometimes we don't always get time to take our animals out. But it's also socialisation for the people with the dogs. There are some people that do isolate themselves, and just simply taking the dogs out and meeting up with other people and just simply talking about their dogs or what their dogs' activities are during the day besides the park is good interaction. So I think, again, it's health and well-being not only for the dogs now, it's health and well-being for the community. However, there is a downside. There are some people that aren't responsible for their animals, and this does concern me in parks that are not off the leash. And I have expressed that maybe we need signs on parks that are not off dog leash parks, so that other people in the community who may have a fear of dogs can go freely in these other parks and have their time of health and well-being. So hopefully we can look into that. So again, I'll be I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Do I have any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. This is a statutory process of the program. The report says on page 96, one location, Harris Reserve Upper Beaconsfield, is not referred to in this order, as subsequent community feedback has resulted in a reconsideration of this site. The wording of this order is sufficiently broad to accommodate future reviews of sites from time to time. So initially it was proposed Harris Reserve would be included in this list, but since November, myself and other councillors and council itself have received some negative sort of feedback in relation to Harris Reserve. Harris Reserve is quite unique sort of parkland. It is definitely encompasses a lot of native wildlife in the surrounding area, kangaroos and other sorts of animals and wildlife. So the neighbours around that vicinity had real concerns, also other environmental concerns as well. Some of them attended at the Upper Beaconsfield Association meeting a couple of weeks ago, and their voice was very loud and clear to me that they did not want it. And there's quite a few people in that area, and the UBA, the Upper Beaconsfield Association, I believe have sent a letter supporting that view, is that it's not an appropriate site for that. And council is open. If the community does not want such a park there, we've responded, and so it's proposed that Harris Reserve will come off this list. I don't want one of these off-leash dog areas that will, if it's going to cause concern, particularly for direct neighbours. We don't want that. We want this to be a successful program. I'm pleased that it is removed. I understand, unfortunately, when we went through this whole process around Upper Beaconsfield, because of the environment that Upper Beaconsfield is, there was no real alternative. So Upper Beaconsfield residents most likely will have to either travel to the other areas. But I think that is an appropriate response. So we will see the rollout of infrastructure at this hierarchy type program. As said before, we cannot forget that people, if they use these parks, they have to be a responsible dog owner. You can't leave them and forget. You've got to be an active owner. You have to have proper control of your dog at all times. You have to be responsible for litter removal. And council will play a role in the education of users of the expectations of council. These are very popular places, and I've got a real strong interest in this area. And when I'm out at work in other areas, other council areas, I get out of the car, take a quick photo, and just see how they're doing it. And I was at Noble Park the other day under the Sky Rail and took a photo, and they are very popular places. And as said by Councillor Ryan, it is great socially for people and animals. And Councillor Ross talked about the Kirby's. Back in late October, received an email from Jane Kirby, and it is still with us, I believe, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's excited that these off-leash dog areas, particularly the fence ones, will allow people with a disability or access issues to be part of their dog being exercised. And I think that is fantastic. So this is the next step. We're going through the statutory process. I know we're tight with budgets, but I think in the future we need to consider further allocations in forecasted budgets, further budgets down the track to really do this properly and roll out this program. But I think it's a very good start, and it will be most welcomed by those people that are very excited about this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, how times have changed, haven't they? We've got to cater for our residents, and now we've got to cater for their animals as well in a big way. It's a long way gone since you walked, what was it called? Poochie, Snuggles. Yeah, that's right, yeah. I forgot. I don't want to know about the death. But you won't be walking that dog too long anyway. But it's an amazing thing. I was just looking at in our Portboard area, we've only got two. We've got two off-leash areas in that region, that huge region. One in Garfield, the Rec Reserve, and one at Cochrane Park in Coorell. And I don't think that's enough. We're going to have to cater further down the line for this activity. And it is an activity, as Councillor Carol Ryan mentioned before. With the new age young people, they choose to have pets and animals in lieu of children today. You might think that's funny, but it's true. And they class as their animals, they're people in fur coats. That's what they think they are. And so therefore we have got a responsibility to cater for that activity. And I can see that in the future that's going to become a bigger issue in our council all the way down the line. And picking up after your animals is probably one of the major issues we have. Education. They need to be educated. Like we have to have education for our children in kindergartens, we need to have education within our animal precincts as well. So I can see that down the line, Mr. Mayor, that this is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And so that's going to be one of those catering things. But thank you. I fully support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have any other councillors wish to speak? There being none, I'll go back to Councillor Ross to summarise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, fellow councillors, for sharing your experience and your thoughts on your different wards on this matter. I must say that I have been shown an email from Jane Kirby who says Ed is unwell and he doesn't communicate really well. and he's in a wheelchair, so that's probably why we haven't seen him around. So I apologise for saying that he's passed away if he hasn't passed away, which obviously he hasn't. So I must say, Ed was an extremely energised sort of person who used to go out there and show the way. And I'm sure Ed, there's a few things that Ed, I'll finish off on a couple of statements that he made. I think it's amazing. I think that's exactly correct, Councillor Moore. You pointed out that only Cooyurup and Garfield have an off-leash dog park. So therefore Bunyip doesn't have one. Goon doesn't have one. Lang Lang doesn't have one. So I find that, fortunately, Pakenham's now got 6. Beaconsfield have got 2. I must say there's been some surveys done with research in relation to health and well-being, and it's shown that people who are older, who have animals, that they generally live longer and their health is better because they go out and they make an effort and walk their dog or get outside and move around a bit. So even though their kids might have left home, they have a pet, something to look after, someone who loves them regardless of what they've done that day. They come home and they wag their tail and they say hello to you, and they're just happy to see you around. What I will do is I'll leave on a finishing couple of remarks by Ed Kirby, who said a couple of things about dog parks, and I think it's synonymous with exactly what people have said around here. Ed Kirby said dog owners needed to look out for people already using the park when letting their canines roam free. And he also said the big thing is to look after the park and respect one another. And I'll leave it on that note. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I will now put this to a vote. Councillors, all those in favour? Carried. Moving on to item 18, Major Projects Report, withdrawn by Councillor Colin Ross.
I move that the recommendation that the report be noted.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Do I have a seconder for this? Councillor Moore. Back to you, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just highlight a couple of things out of this report. When I noted them, I went upside down, so I'm working the other way backward. I must say the redevelopment of the junior football club and the cricket pavilion is coming along. I note that the groups have been meeting together on a regular basis, and then improvements on the Tumac Valley Reserve Southern Pavilion will incorporate not only the junior football club but Little Athletics and the baseball facility. They are much needed facility upgrades that are well used and provide another access for the community to, and they're the project's looking to come to completion in 2021. I must say another item I saw there that I drive past nearly every day is a breath of fresh air, Kenilworth Avenue. I've never been so relieved to see anything that doesn't have potholes and corrugations in it. I can see some lines on the road. It's got gutters there. People can drive up and down. And I must say, anyone who held their breath wouldn't be around if they'd held their breath for it to be done, but it has been done. So I must say that is coming along really, really well. And I know that the councillors in that area will be much relieved to have that project finished. Another project that I note that has been quite a while coming and has taken a lot of time and effort is the Tumac Creek pedestrian bridges, the north and south. The north end, I believe, early on was in conjunction with the Rotary Club, had something to do with that, and it was built years and years ago, and it's getting a well-earned upgrade that allows people to not walk on Princess Highway to go round to Tumac Valley Reserve from where the school is there. It's very well used, and that's coming along well, and that should be complete very soon. But the area that I'm really excited about is the southern bridge down at the southern end of Tumac Reserve, and the fact that it took so long to get the works to be done, underneath the railway line that connected the whole road, which makes it a lot safer for kids to come along. It gives them an option of different schools to go to as well, because they never used to have a choice. They used to walk over the railway line, and as parents watching kids go and do that, that was really heartbreaking, because you just always thought that, you know, if they don't concentrate, something's going to happen. But I must say, with really good pathways there, Park Run goes up and down there every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and they're very excited as well to have some different options. But down at the southern end, at the moment, you have to go all the way down to Henry Road to come back up the other side. So for those kids, to go to somewhere like Cardinia Life or the Ovals up there, you actually have to go all the way down to Cardinia Road, or you've got to go all the way up to Henry Road and then come back down again. So I look forward to that being done. I know some fellow councillors are excited in Central Ward about that getting done too, and that just creates a better linkage for bike riders, runners, walkers and everybody. So I look forward to that. It says the Southern Bridge is due for completion in April 2020. I've been watching and I can't see any movement, so they must be going to build it terribly fast, I can tell you, if they're going to get it done by that time. But anyway, I look forward to that. So I'll hand it over to my fellow councillors to see if they'd like to highlight anything out of the report too. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I'll now go to Councillor Moore to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ross, for allowing me just to have some speaking items in here. The Bunyip Recreation Reserve Soccer Pavilion is something to behold. It's just about complete. The construction of the new pavilion. It's a joint venture funding between Council and the Victorian Government Building Better Regions Fund. Jointly did this project. So it's ready to be open. It's going to be complete, I think, in March this year. So it's something where the community, that soccer community, has been living out of a pretty poorly built relocatable building. And this is just such a fantastic pavilion for this hard-working committee that are just over the moon with this fantastic soccer pavilion. I'm sure, Mr Mayor, you'll be there for the opening, because it's going to be a fantastic time. And sort of somewhere around March. But the Langland Community and Recreation Precinct Pavilion, which is the major recreation reserve in Langland. After about 5 to 6 years of the program, this is ready to be opened. The first game will be on the 28th of March this year. That's not far away. So the teams down there are excited as you wouldn't believe for the 7 o'clock start. They're going to have a night-time game because the Langland Community Bank purchased a 36-hectare parcel of land all those years ago. And in conjunction with the Australian Government Building Better Regions Fund again, $1.5 million, which is fantastic, allowed this project to happen. And so it's overdue to come along, and we've got the cricket club, of course, are playing there right at the moment. So it's a great pavilion. You've got to come down to have a look at this, how wonderful this is going to be for that region of Langland down there. They've been waiting for so long for this type of facility. When you see what they operated out of all those years gone by, it just shows you what we would do. I don't know what we would do without our community banks, supported by the Bendigo Bank, but their community banks, the Langland Community Bank, have done a fantastic job in this spot to commit $3.2 million for the land there, which made the actual project possible. So they did a fantastic job, and I can't commend them much more than what I do, because it's going to be great. And when Langland develops as it is at the moment, at 100 mile an hour, that is just going to be surrounded by that. We've got the occasion this time. When you will build it, they will come, and you'll find that for one time we're actually in front of the game. And with the support of the Langland Community Bank, that's made this thing happen. So first game on 28th of March, it's going to be just a fantastic night. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have any other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Just touching base, I know Councillor Ross mentioned it, but Kenilworth Avenue, it's great to see the first stage close to completion. I know the shared footpath is still coming, But council is managing stage 2, and that's well progressing, and both stages are expected to be completed by June 2020. And we all know the pain, particularly those residents in that road has experienced, but this road, once open, will have a wider community benefit, and we know the connection between Casey and Cardinia. And it'll be great. It'll provide another alternate access. We know the Princess Highway is often at capacity, so really good. Talking about the Princess Highway, the intersection upgrades, and page 253 talks about those 8 intersections, and it is a massive project to upgrade these 8 intersections. These are major intersections, and we talked about Timdale Road earlier, but these are major intersections, and it will be a staged program. Because we don't want the whole Princess Highway gridlocked, and plus it takes a lot of officers' time and effort to plan these. So the first intersections to be rolled out will be the O'Neill Road intersection in Beaconsfield, and also the Glisman Road / Beaconsfield Avenue. And these intersections we know already are at capacity, so they are progressing to the planning stage, and towards the end of the year we'll tender out for those intersections, and I know that is going to be warmly welcomed, particularly down the Officer Beaconsfield end of our Shire. Just talking about Lang Lang, Councillor Moore, great that you talked about the Lang Lang Recreation Reserve. I understand that there's going to be another big event down there, I think in March, the human powered vehicles. So that is another user of that facility. I want to see that facility used to the maximum and used 7 days a week, and by having the human powered vehicles down there. And we know, I think probably 12 months ago, we sat in a meeting where they approached us. They wanted to use the facility, so our officers have been working with them, and obviously the Committee of Management. I think they're very pleased to have them. So it's a great user to use that. Human powered vehicles, a lot of our primary schools are engaged in that sport, and they wanted another location in our Shire and Lang Lang is perfect with that fantastic sealed driveway and many car parks that go around that reserve. So really, really good. And just update in relation to the new footpath program, Kenilworth Avenue, and also the Old Princess Highway in Beaconsfield, both of those are still waiting on either Vic Road's approval, and there's some issues around Kenilworth near the railway station. There's a lot of vegetation there, so we're working through that. That's going to take time. But also the Old Princess Highway in Desmond Court, that is basically abutting the intersection upgrade of O'Neill Road, and it does make sense that we maybe tie in those footpath improvements when we deliver the O'Neill Road, so you don't have any redundant works, and so we'll deliver that footpath as part of that intersection upgrade at O'Neill Road. So a bit of delays in that space if anyone in Beaconsfield were wanting to know the reason why that's not yet constructed. And it's great to see a number of recreation reserve projects, universal sort of change room upgrades are progressing well at Beaconsfield Officer, and soon council will open up Worrell Reserve change rooms, so that's going to be great. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other councillors that wish to speak? Councillor Ryan.
Sorry, I thought Councillor Moore was taking the floor again. Through you, Mayor. Just wanted to point out some of the other things that have been done, some of the things that have been completed on footpaths. Lee Drive in Pakenham, and we've got Webster Way in Pakenham, which was the existing path to the bus stop, which needed badly doing. That's been completed. We also have Slattery Place in Pakenham, near Railway Avenue on the north side of the racecourse development, and Ahern Road in Pakenham is completed. So going along the list here, it shows that our team is working really, really hard to get these jobs done, and I really appreciate what the staff have done. and keep on these projects. But there's a lot more projects that have been mentioned that I don't need to repeat. I just think that the team itself needs to be thanked for the hard work they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Do I have any other councillors that wish to speak? There being none, I'll go back to Councillor Ross to summarise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's only one other project I'd like to highlight here, and Councillor Brown's not here to speak about it. I must say the Cooeyrup Tennis Club upgrade. I must say this is where local councillors come in really handy who live in a local area, because they observe things that often if you didn't live there you'd drive past lots of times and wouldn't notice. I must say it was highlighted at the start of this term. They had 2 tennis courts which didn't have club rooms and basically had moss growing on the top of them and just looked really ungainly, and you just wouldn't want to play there. It was pointed out that the people who from Cooeyrup had to travel 10 kilometres to Cardinia to play on their courts to play competition tennis. And that was something that I was unaware of, and I must say it was brought to council's attention. And for those who live in the area, they'll notice there's 2 new tennis courts. The 2 existing courts have been refurbished, and they're turning the old swimming club rooms into a tennis club facility. So I must say that's something that Councillor Brown shared with us and he advocated for, and he's not here to share that. But I must say it's a jointly supported project by the Victorian Government and the Sports and Recreation Victoria. So I look forward to seeing, he pointed out that kids will go and play on it. If it's there, they'll walk down there and play on it. And if it looks inviting and new, why not? So I just think that's one that's out of the blue. We didn't have on our charts. We didn't have it part of our 5-year plan back at the start of the term. And there goes to show, if you can advocate well and you're excited about something and we put in the funding, you can make something happen. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillors, I'll now put this to the vote. All those in favour? I declare this item carried. Now that concludes discussion of the items withdrawn. Can I please have a motion, please, to adopt the recommendations for the balance of the items listed? Councillor Michael Schilling, and a seconder, Councillor Graham Moore. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Reports or minutes of committees. I note that several reports from various committees have been tabled in addition to the minutes of recent council briefing sessions, and these are available if councillors wish to view them. Councillors, do we have any matters you wish to report? Councillor Owen.
Can't find my list. Thank you, Mayor, but I just want to mention I attended the Motorsports Steering Group meeting on last Thursday, I think it was. And we had the Cooeyrup and District Motorcycle Club and the Pakenham Auto Club present. So we're progressing their plans for their new homes. So we had great discussions there. We're working through the planning sort of permit process with our 2 clubs so they can sort of build the required infrastructure. So we're assisting them through that process. But it was really good to hear that over the summer they have been working with council to generate roughly $30,000 worth of hay on the 335 McGregor Road. So council gave permission and they coordinated the 2 clubs to coordinate that hay to be transferred and delivered to West Gippsland for those farmers affected. So that was a great story, and the 2 clubs worked with council to deliver that. So well done to those 2 clubs and council. I think that was a fantastic thing. Also, back in December, I attended the 90th birthday of the anniversary since the opening of the office church, and it's quite an interesting sort of background. That church started up with 5 trustees, family trustees, who sort of manage or own the church, and obviously the original trustees have passed, but the trusteeship, I suppose, has been transferred to existing family sort of relatives. And anyone who's sort of watched that church grow, and particularly over the last 2 years, the real community sort of passion to really improve that church. It is multi-denominational. There's not, and any sort of religion can use it, and it is open up for services of any sort of kind and flavour, and also for weddings. So I just wanted to. It was a great celebration. It was packed. It's a small church, and I think I was christened in that church. So it's great to see that that's still being very much celebrated for Officer, because unfortunately the history of Officer, there's not much left sort of standing. So and it's at risk of further sort of deterioration. So to have that building celebrated was fantastic. I attended the Upper Beaconsfield Village Festival yesterday, and I know, Mayor, you might talk about that. But I just wanted to talk about, I attended the AGM. That's what happens with me with paper. I get lost. But I attended the AGM back in, I think it was December, of the Beaconsfield kindergarten. And it was really great to hear their report of the previous year. And once again, they went through an assessment through this rating system that's universal of kindergartens across Australia, but they were rated as exceeding national quality standards. That's the Beaconsfield Kindergarten, and they have 2 campuses at O'Neill Road and Wood Street, and it is an independently run kindergarten, but to once again get the exceeding national quality standard was great, and they really celebrated that at the AGM, and it was really good listening to, obviously it's a community of management, volunteers. They do have a manager which they employ to help the community run the kindergarten, but last year they introduced a program called Bush Kinder, and it's really good. It's a different way of learning and getting young people out into the natural environment. Wood Street is great. They sort of abut Bob Burgess Reserve, abut the creek, and it's really good. During term 2 and 3, they go out and teach the kids in the outdoor environment, and really good. And they're achieving so much at that kindergarten. I just wanted to promote what they're doing. It is a volunteer committee of management, and they are doing great things. So I just want to promote that at council. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. And I'm just going to add a few words into that. As you mentioned, they had the Village Festival at Upper Beaconsfield yesterday. It was a fabulous event, and I just wanted to make mention today that that was on a very important date. It was actually the 37th anniversary yesterday of Ash Wednesday bushfires. And the festival, the Village Festival at Upper Beaconsfield, was born out of the Ash Wednesday bushfires the year after the fires occurred, to bring the community together to rebuild. And, a few people I know, and I've lived my life in the hills, and we talk about Ash Wednesday, and everyone feels, they reflect on it because it was right on their back doorstep. Interestingly, a lot of people I know don't realise how hard Upper Beaconsfield was hit by those fires, and statistically it was hit hardest. They had 21 people lost their lives in Upper Beaconsfield, which is more than any of the other townships across the state or the country on that day. It was just terrible conditions. It was an unexpected wind change that turned the fire front from a narrow fire front into a 15-kilometre long fire front, and everyone was caught out. There was 2 fire crews from the Narre Warren North Fire Brigade, I believe, and from Patton Hill, who both perished in those fires, along with a number of residents. And it's really poignant to see how vibrant the community was yesterday at the Village Festival, that's come 37 years after that event, which totally decimated that township back then. So I really want to commend the residents of that community and everyone that attended yesterday, because it is a wonderful thing to see community band together. And in light of the terrible summer we've had across Australia, and the thankfulness that we haven't been so affected in our local area from that recently, it just really shone light onto me yesterday, being there for the anniversary. And I then went and dropped in on the Allback down in Cockatoo and had a talk to the guys down there. And I went to Emerald Lake after that to see the music festival, and everyone enjoying the outdoors and everyone smiling and being happy, but just realizing that to reflect on what has occurred in the past. And so we make sure we take the right steps to protect ourselves and our communities as best we can for the future. I think is important. Councillors, I'll move on to Councillor Ryan has something she would like to share.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. It's an interesting bit of history there. Takes me back of remembering what Ash Wednesday was like. We got evacuated 3 times, so it's a pretty scary time. But we've come a long way, which is great. Most of the time, well, we've been at Christmas, and I hope everyone had a good Christmas and New Year. So there isn't a huge amount to report, but I attended the Men's Shed last meeting, and it's great to hear what they've got to say and what they do in the community and how they conduct their meetings. It's passionate, it's wholesome, and they just care about the community and what they can do for people. And they're breaking, it seems, at the moment because they've got some of their classes happening in the evening. So to try and fit all their clientele in, it's been a juggle of times and people. And my fellow councillors and I went to Cardinia Life to have some photographs taken, so there were some very good action shots there because we did say that we weren't very, our photos were very boring in the Connect, so we got a bit more adventurous with playing with the ball and trying to shoot some hoops. And Councillor Schilling got one in and no one saw him, so that was a bit sad. So we'll have to go down and have another look. So yeah, that was a bit of fun. But also we were seeing how the new fans were working within Cardinia Life, and they weren't working on that day, but once they were turned on, they were really good. So, well, we noticed them, shall I say. But hopefully it will make a huge difference. I went to the historical reference group, and that's always a fantastic organisation to go to. And there's a lady there, Robin Brown, who has written a book on some of our history. And she's trying to publish it, but she needs to find a publisher. So we're hoping that she will find someone soon, because we don't want to lose information about our history within Cardinia Shire. Also attended the Round the Table meeting, which is part of Together We Can program. And it's always fun to go there too, because, you know, everyone's enthusiastic and everyone brings something to that committee. And I think it's really important that we keep that focus going on in reference to, it's not just about women and children, it's about men as well in our community, that we are starting to hear more and more situations that they need just as much as assistance as women and children do, because there are men out there that do have children that are on their own, so they need our support as much as possible. And talking about festivals, I did go to the festival the concert over the weekend. I was telling the councillors it was all about, you know, getting out there and trying to get focused on music and trying to encourage John Farnham to come down here to Cardinia Shire, but I wasn't successful in that, so it just didn't work. So, you know, it'd be nice to have someone like that to come down and visit our fireys and what they've done for our community. So I really commend all our people within our community that did assist everyone within the recent fires, and they do a tremendous job, and I don't think we should thank them enough, and I think with my fellow councillors we just want to relay that, how important they are in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention that I did attend the funeral of Doug Hamilton in Lang Lang, and there were some councillors there. I want to thank them for being there. Councillor Ross was there as well, and Councillor Brown was also there, and many of the staff were there too. Doug Evans, Tracy Parker, in particular, and former CEO of Cardinia Shire was Gary McCullum was also there. So there was a fantastic tribute to a wonderful councillor that we had in Cardinia Shire. Doug was so connected to the farming group, particularly of the Lang Lang Coorup area. And actually, the former mayor, former councillor of Cardinia Shire, Graham Legg, Councillor Graham Legg, former councillor, got up and spoke very, very well about Doug's life from a council's point of view, and he represented us very, very well at the funeral. So I was really honoured to be there. But we had the South Sudanese Community Day recently, which was fantastic. It was great to see the mayor spoke there. Spoke very well, and Councillor Ross was there. Councillor Owen was there with his two of his children, two boys, and Councillor Brown was there also with his wife Ellen. What a great day! It was a really great day to get amongst the community with the South Sudanese people, and of course the CEO Carol Jess was there as well. So they got dressed up on the day. I didn't get dressed up on the day, but it was really a fantastic event. You've got to see the photos to understand what I mean. But there was something else special happened a few weeks ago, and because we have our youth council, a couple of our youth council members here, I want to recognise that are in our audience tonight, Mr Mayor. We had one of our special youth councillors became a Queen Scout just recently. That's Jennifer James. And I just want to make mention of Councillor Carol Ryan, who spoke very, very well on the day about Jennifer. Jennifer and Councillor Ryan got very close because they were mentoring one another when Jennifer was a youth council here. So well done, Councillor Ryan. It was really great to be there and show our support for one of our local young people who've done a fantastic job in that space as a Queen Scout is a big deal for those people. So that's all. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. And I can tell you, I know that receiving the Queen Scout Award is no easy task. It is a big list of things you have to tick off for that. It's no easy task at all. All right. Any other councillors that would wish to speak? Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. Yourself and I both attended this year the Australia Day breakfast in Cockatoo, and I just want to make mention that at that breakfast, and I will mention as well that the CEO joined us for breakfast in Cockatoo that morning, and we thank her for that. But that morning was a special morning for our local history group, because after many, many years of work, they finally launched their new history book, which is called Voices from the Past. Several years ago, they got a grant to transcribe recordings that had been made by Dot Griffin after the Ash Wednesday fires. She went around and spoke to different families that were very prominent families within the area and spoke to them about the work they'd done for the community over many, many years. Those tapes sat for a long, long time until they got this grant, and I think it's taken them 3 and a bit years to get this book done, but it's an incredible book. It's a very thick, heavy book, and it's a really good read. It's very easy to read, but the stories read like somebody is actually sitting there just talking to you. They've pretty much word for word transcribed these tapes. So it's very easy and it's very enjoyable because you are hearing their stories. It's not somebody else telling their stories. So if anybody wants to read or wants a copy of it, let me know. I'm more than happy to pick you up a copy. So I thank that committee. I also just want to make mention that last week I went and spoke to a group of year 3 and 4s at Cockatoo Primary School, and they wanted to talk about elections and how to run a campaign, how to get elected, the qualities of a good leader. They wanted to know about local laws, how local laws are made, what the role of a councillor is. They wanted to talk about consultation. So it was really interesting that young children of that age, and they had so many questions, and they were really good questions. So hats off to these teachers that were encouraging them. They're going to run their own campaigns and have an election very soon. about an environmental project that they can do within their school. They've each got to make a speech. So it's a really good little group. There's about 80 kids involved, so those speeches are going to go on for quite a while, I would think. But it was really good. And while I was there, one of the young kids put his hand up and he said that he could remember being part of the consultation for the playground at Gembrook, and he was at the launch of that playground just a few weeks prior and saw us out there. So it was really nice to see a young kid of that age be part of the consultation and then be at the other end of it to see it launched and open. So I thought you might all enjoy that little story. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. And look, we might be able to put these kids to good use in a few months' time. There's going to be a bit of campaigning going across the state. I imagine they're going to, everyone needs some work experience at some point. All right, any other councillors? Oh, sorry, Councillor Ross, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things to highlight. It should be noted the container deposit scheme was leaked out of state government that in 2023 it will be introduced. So a little bit away, but still, for anyone who can remember, it says on the internet that it came in the 80s. Well, I actually reckon it came in the 70s because I was a little kid back in the early 70s, and I can remember collecting aluminium cans when you used to get 40 cents a kilo for aluminium cans, and it worked out to be about a cent a can or something like that. So that was something that brings a little bit of money to young kids who can go around and clean up rubbish. Also, too, it gives them an idea that waste can be used for other things, and it is valuable. So that's something that was leaked out from the state government, and it's on the internet, so it's all visible for people to see. Also, too, I must mention the Australia Day celebrations that we had at the Cardinia Cultural Centre, and in particular, I would like to thank the Lakeside Residents Group for organising the outdoor activities. That is an achievement in itself, and it isn't always easy with the different people who turn up to do things. I must say this year there was an amazing amount of diversity with the cultural diversity in the area, and anyone who saw the drummers out there who were banging away, they were absolutely sensational, and they just kept going and going for hours out there. They kept people entertained. I must say to all the award winners, very well deserved, and those people, I know Councillor Brett Owen introduced when he was Mayor, the fact that we should do more than just give them a trophy at the time, but actually bring them in to discuss what they would like to achieve in the year with their award while they've got the opportunity. So I look forward to, sorry, I know, was it right? Or, yeah. No, I wasn't sure. Anyway, I thought that was a really good initiative because initially they never used to have an opportunity to sort of do a hell of a lot, but now they have an opportunity and a bit of a platform to go ahead and talk with our staff about what they would like to do and what they're passionate about. Also to the Cardinia Concert Band, I know Councillor Moore always mentions them, and I must say they're always there. They do a really good job for us, and I must say they stay there for the whole time. So even though they don't have to play all the time, I must say that was a really big success today. I would also like to thank our staff for their assistance to the East Gippsland councils during the fires. We hold the unenviable title as being the highest level of fire-prone council in Victoria and I think Australia. So we are best practice at this. We've had a lot of practice, but our staff did a great job going down and trying to help them and give them advice on what they can do as a council to be more engaged and to help out. So to our council staff, thank you very much for that. And then I'll finish off. I've had a few things covered by my fellow councillors. But the last thing I'd like to say is I attended the Social and Affordable Housing Partnership group, and Councillor Wilmot chairs the group, and I'm a delegate on the group with her. I must say some of the results just on preliminary stages on this partnership that are coming through are really, really good. And most people will never know just how much it impacts people's lives to have a home and a safe home at that. And I feel really proud that in this space, the council's been able to play some small part in this. We aren't the solution, but we could be part of a solution. And I must say this space will only get better. And I must say to the community groups who put their time and effort in at very little amount of money, and the things that we can add to it will make lives different. And as we get bigger and bigger, we will have more people who come here in need as their fortunes in life go up and down. So if we can be there to try and help them the best we can, I think that's a wonderful thing. I look forward to our future meetings and seeing what happens in that space. That was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I'm going to go to Councillor Moore, who's got something else to add.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I just
Okay.
wanted to give a vote of thanks to one of our councillors, if that's okay by you.
Sure.
I want to thank Councillor Ross for attending the Bunyip Australia Day celebration in Bunyip, because as we have in Port Ward, we've got 2 councillors and 3 Australia Day awards ceremonies, and it's really great to have a councillor represent us at all of our Australia Day breakfast celebrations. And Councillor Ross, I want to thank you. I know you're going out of your road to go and do that. They welcomed you very well, and I had nothing but high reports about your speech, as long as it may be. But they, but not that was a surprise. But it was had a lot in it, and they respected you very well. And I want to thank you from me personally, because I know you did it on my behalf, so I could go to Coorup for the first time. Thank you, Mayor.
No worries.
Just a slight point of order on that, Mr Mayor. I must say, Councillor Moore, thank you very much for your kind words. I must say, when I got there, they said, you've got a 5-minute period to speak into. And I said, okay, I'll try and keep to that. But they said, don't worry, if Councillor Moore was here, he goes well over. So they said, you've got plenty of scope to speak. So that's what they said to me. But mind you, I tried to keep in line with that, because I knew we had our big celebration coming up, and the guest speakers who get invited, was more important that they had something to say than me. But anyway, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to go down there and meet those people of Bunyip. Thank you.
Councillor Ross, you were representing Councillor Moore, so it was only befitting to deliver a speech along the same lines as himself, I would imagine. Do I have any other? Do we have any other councillors that wish to speak? Thank you, councillors, for sharing your reports with us. Presentations of petitions. Councillors, do we have any petitions you would like to present? Okay, there being none, we're going to move on to community question time. We have received a question from Tony O'Hara, and I see Tony in the gallery. I will refer your questions to the General Manager of Livable Communities, Tracy Parker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the question, Tony. So the question read, with reference to February the 3rd planning meeting, C250 planning amendment, in item 6 in the table, the recommendation was seek to include policy to allow for the possible future upgrade of Lakeside Boulevard Neighbourhood Activity Centre to a major activity centre as contemplated in the Cardinia Road Precinct Structure Plan. And the officer's comment to that was not supported. There are a number of development opportunities in Pakenham and Officer major activity centres, and so at this time, this is where major development opportunities are being directed. Will Council provide opportunity for Lakeside community to have a say in the officer and councillor's rejection of the Lakeside Boulevard neighbourhood being identified as a major activity centre? I believe that the arguments for denying this classification should be subject to public scrutiny, either by a consultation process or a planning panel with stakeholders. This decision could deny the shopping precinct the right and ability to improve the current and future facilities. A decision on such a significant matter should be sufficient to warrant input from the community rather than a council officer's opinion. That was the question. So a response to that is that Council is required to undertake a review of our MSS, so our Municipal Strategic Statement, on a regular basis, and as you've indicated, Amendment C250 is that process that facilitates that review. So the amendment was exhibited in November of 2019. The exhibition process allows for all the community to make submissions regarding the content of the MSS. Council received 2 submissions that were supportive of the amendment, 1 which had no objection, and 5 submissions that were seeking change to the amendment. On this basis, the amendment is required to be referred to an independent planning panel appointed by the Minister for Planning for consideration. Council at its meeting on the 4th of February determined to refer all the submissions received to an independent planning panel for consideration. This planning panel will be held on Tuesday the 28th of April. All parties who've made a submission will be invited to be heard by the independent panel. The submitter who lodged the submission in question regarding the status of the Lakeside Boulevard shopping precinct will be able to be heard by the panel on this matter. The panel will then provide Council with an independent report, which Council will then consider and determine if any changes are required to the MSS as drafted prior to us submitting the amendment to the Minister for Planning for approval if it's finally adopted by Council.
Thank you, Mrs. Parker. We have received 2 questions from Rosa Santo, and I see Rosa's in the audience. I will refer both of your questions over to the General Manager of Infrastructure and Environment, Mr. Peter Benezek.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Rosa, for your questions. The first question relates to a gentleman who undertook voluntary cleaning activities in Main Street, Pakenham. The question is as follows. As a violent physical attack has left him, after many years, no longer able to do early morning cleaning of Main Street in Pakenham, as the man is now permanently disabled, what is now being done by Cardinia Shire Council in the area that he looked after so well for so long without payment? I can report, Thank you. I can report that Council continues to undertake routine maintenance activities in that space to attend to cleaning, litter, street sweeping, graffiti removal and furniture maintenance, and undertakes activities as required. The area is also inspected 3 times weekly to identify any defects, and they're also attended to. Thanks. The second question relates to Pakenham again. There is an increasing number of people coming into the Pakenham Main Street shopping centre. Is there anything being considered to provide a location of public toilet access in Main Street, as many people are complaining about the absence of such a facility being available? At this point in time, there is no plans for any additional facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Benezek. Finally, we have received a question from Gloria O'Connor, and I see that Gloria is in the gallery today. I will refer your question to the General Manager, Livable Communities, Mrs. Tracy Parker.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks for the question, Gloria. So the question reads, with regards to the areas of Green Wedge in Cardinia Shire, what areas have been already zoned, if any, and what others are being planned for rezoning where there is to be future development? Are there maps available for community interest, please? In the City of Casey, there is a quite sharp increase in applications for place of worship and schools in the Green Wedge, and this is likely in Cardinia Shire as a rapid urban and commercial development continues. So with regards to Green Wedge zoned land, generally all land that's located outside of the urban growth boundary and outside of our rural townships is currently zoned Green Wedge. You can view any of the mapping associated with the Cardinia planning scheme, which is what identifies where that land is, either on Council's website or through the DELP website. So if you want, after the meeting, I could show you how you can access those maps for you to view. There's currently no amendments on foot at Council to rezone Green Wedge land to another zone. The current Green Wedge provisions do allow for uses such as place of worship and schools to be permitted in that area, subject to the grant of a planning permit. So Council, if we receive any such applications, would need to assess each application and determine if a permit should be granted.
Thank you, Mrs. Parker. That concludes tonight's proceedings. So I'd like to thank you all for your attendance, and I declare this meeting closed.